Gotta pay the gnome. Gotta pay the gnome to get through. $1,000. Can I move now? Okay. Ooh, this tripod. You want to say yours?
They say get back, we say fight back. Get back.
Fight back.
Get back.
Fight back.
They say get back, we say fight back. Get back.
Fight back.
Get back.
Fight back.
They say get back, we say fight back. Get back.
Fight back.
Get back.
Fight back.
They say get back, we say fight back. Get back.
Fight back.
Get back.
Fight back.
Woo! Thank you all for this full house. I love seeing people are here and ready to fight back. My name's Caitlin. I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And I'm gonna introduce Katie, who's gonna get us started.
Hi everybody, how's everybody doing tonight? I just want to get one more round of applause for everybody who came out on their Friday night to do some political thank you all for coming out tonight. It's a Friday night, but this is a very important task that we have ahead of us. So, like Caitlin said, my name is Katie. I'm also with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I was also just working on the Claudia and Karina campaign, so you might know me from there. If this is your first time coming to an event after that campaign, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Yes.
And today we're going to talk about why we should not be agonizing and we should be organizing.
Right.
So I'll give us a little background about what we're doing here today. So we had a event last week. We did a screening of a talk that was given at the People's Forum called What is to be Done. You don't need to see it to be here, but if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. It's on the People's Forum YouTube channel. There's a live stream available. It's a really, really great analysis of what happened with this election. And so now we're going to continue following up on that and progressively continuing to organize and bring people into our movement to stop the incoming fascism that's coming here, or that's already here. So we're now 10 days out from the election, and we have a clearer understanding of what happened there. And I think the two main things we want to highlight are that over 15 million people fewer voted in this election than in the previous election, and at least 10 million of them were abandoning the Democratic Party. They had 10 million votes lost for their party. And now we're kind of stuck in this horror show situation. We're watching these cabinet picks roll in that are just increasingly scarier. We have Matt Gaetz, classic alleged pedophile lawyer for overseeing torture at Guantanamo Bay. We have Elon Musk, don't really need a disclaimer there. Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, the lady who shot her dog, among other things.
Shame.
And notably Marco Rubio, one of the most aggressive, disgusting in terms of foreign policy, who wants to drag us right into war with Cuba, China. He doesn't care. He'll do it. He's a dog of the state. We know that. So, funny enough, this is a shocking reality that we have to deal with. And 2 weeks ago, we just saw the Democrats calling these people Hitler. We saw them calling them fascist dictators, narcissists, existential threats, every name under the sun. And now they're shaking hands with Trump.
Shame.
Shame, exactly. They're congratulating Trump. I don't know if you guys saw Kamala's succession speech, but she was smiling. She was, or no, not concession speech. She was smiling, and now the whole party is advocating for a peaceful transition of power to Trump, the person who they just said was an existential threat, not even 2 weeks ago. And we're also seeing a perfect replay of the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016. Kamala literally had advisors from Hillary's team on her, and they wonder why they lost when that team was clearly not a winning team. So, and now we have an even smaller group of like blue MAGA Democrats who are saying, "Oh, the election is fraudulent," whatever. Things are just completely crazy. So, once again, history is repeating itself, and we want to talk about how did we get here. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. One thing that we do know is that the capitalist politicians do not learn from their mistakes.
That's
They
right.
never do. They keep repeating them, and that's exactly why we're here.
Yep.
So it is our task to keep reminding everybody, remind our class, our friends, family, relatives, about what happened and keep the historical memory alive within our movement of why this is not going to work out. Otherwise, people are going to get duped every single election.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't do that, they're just going to keep throwing us the same old policies and people that they have been, and they're going to wonder why it didn't work. So we also know from last week's presentation that the way forward is going to be organizing our own movement. The Democratic Party has fallen rightward and is a dead end for left organizing. It's very clearly not going to be taken over by the left and used for our purposes. But that doesn't mean that the people who identify with it or look up to it are unreachable with our politics. And in fact, most of them would be very amenable to what most people here would like to see. So before I get into the specific objectives for tonight, I just wanted to pose a question. So one of our tasks moving forward is to help these well-meaning people break the cycle of falling for the electoral spectacle and all these false promises that the Democrats make, right? So one of the best ways to politically empower ourselves is to ensure that we all have political literacy and that we understand the forces that we're working against. And one of those forces is the capitalist media apparatus.
Yep.
So I just want to pose a question to the group. What have you guys seen in like the media, debates, forums? What kind of talking points are you seeing coming out of this election cycle that are just outright lies? And just raise your hand if you have one.
Immigration.
Yeah.
Like the idea that people can even be illegal, like they're just demonizing everyone that doesn't agree with the
That she didn't go for far enough right.
Mhm.
That, it was wokeism that did it, even though,
Yeah.
they turned on immigrants and, everyone else. So, yeah.
I think they said on CNN that the youth wants another Margaret Thatcher. That's what they said that we want. So.
I'm hearing media turning on Arab communities and everything, saying like, oh, they betrayed Palestine, therefore Palestine did not help us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Demonizing the transgender community.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anything sticking out?
The usual scapegoating minority voters. They could take some accountability for like Democrats' involvement in mass deportation as well.
Yeah.
They will lose the election and do that.
All right. Any last ones?
Like talking about how the whole country has become fascist and it's like this big Trump wave, even though only 27% of the population realistically voted for him.
Yeah, they said that they fought a war against fascism in the Second World War. Like 500,000 people died, and now they call Trump a fascist, but there's a smooth transition.
Shake his hand, take the pictures with them. Okay, good. Any last ones? I think this is a good foundation to start on.
Well, the question is the lies they say why Democrats lost.
Yeah, just any lies that you've been hearing coming out where it's so
Well,
obviously
the
not
very
true.
common is like people who didn't vote for Kamala is obviously uneducated.
Or just sexist.
Oh yeah, yep.
I was gonna say they blame like third-party voters.
Yeah.
Just like,
Add it up and it's not matching.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll move on to our next slide with our objectives. Just gonna look over these as a group and see how we feel about them. So our objectives for tonight, we want to review the lessons learned from Trump's last term and how we can apply those to our current movement. We want to determine how to avoid short-term activism in favor of organization that lasts through these protracted struggles in the long term. We want to increase our confidence in having approachable political conversations with people we know by understanding our history and how we got here. We want to forge strong relationships with each other and identify ways to bring this energy and information back to our own circles and neighborhoods. And we want to inform and develop a program and the demands that are relevant and speak to the needs of the working class. Is everyone good with these objectives tonight?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to pass it right back over to Caitlin.
Thank you. Okay, so this looks like a lot. What lesser evil politics does over time and the degradation of the Democratic Party. Like my goal with this section, I don't want to just bore you and go over like, okay, here's this major timeline. Let's talk these points to death. Some people that might bring joy, they love this. That's not really my cup of tea, but what I do want to do though is to show a clear timeline of when and why the Democrats have conceded to the people's needs. That even in conceding to the people's needs, they still upheld imperialism at every chance, like no matter their concession, and to really just paint a picture of how the Democrats moved further right over time. Because like we just talked about, it's a lie that they weren't right enough, that they were actually this like totally left group this election cycle that, really identified with the people and helped their needs. That's a lie. So that's kind of what I want to accomplish here. So we're going to start all the way back to 1945 with Harry Truman. A couple major things happened with Harry Truman. He did desegregation of the military and federal workforces. So they're like, okay, like he's listening. This is so great. But also then initiated the Red Scare and the loss of China. So the loss of China referring to you lost it to communism. So it's America's loss,
Don't forget Hiroshima.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so, like on Harry Truman, something that I just wanted to point out is it's not that he was like radical or like really like a radical force who supported the people's needs or even was like against Jim Crow segregation. But Harry Truman was a white supremacist. He had on record tons of racial slurs, upholding white supremacy at anything. But it was his understanding that the government legally based on racial supremacy, white supremacy, could not beat communism. So that's like something that was a real thing. That was a real analysis of his of like, okay, if the Red Scare, it's either communism or we desegregate, you know, that type of thing. And then also the Black civil rights organizations and the pressure that they applied to make these wins. So in this time period, it's not just that he was a Democrat who's with the people. It was those two pieces of analysis that we want to be communism and that I have to have the Black vote, the Black support to be able to, you know, be a popular president and to move forward. So then Lyndon B. Johnson, 1964, the Civil Rights Act happened at that time, the Voting Act. Obviously, there was huge movements for civil rights at that time period. And seeing that these like were passed, the Voting Act, there's robust environmental protections at the time. He also was a racist Southern Democrat who really would have been like in the Dixiecrats. Like he would have moved away from the, you know, from the Democrats at the time. The type of politician who would have been, you know, with the Dixiecrats at the time. And even then he was still forced by the movement, like the very severe movement in the streets every single day, fighting and struggling to make those concessions, the Civil Rights Act, Voting Act, and to even have environmental protections. But at the same time, he was responsible for a significant escalation in the Vietnam War. Operation Rolling Thunder was like major bombing campaigns against North Vietnam at the time. And he stated that escalation and the US presence in Vietnam was the only solution. So this is at the same time of like making all of these progressive changes, really feeling pressured by the movement, that he still is saying, we have to be in Vietnam. That's the only way. That's the only way to move forward in the struggle. And then moving on to not a Democrat, but someone that really changed politics and the state of our country, Ronald Reagan. Let's hear a boo. Boo. I love a good boo, and this man deserves it. So this was really the end of the social justice era. So 1964 is not the beginning of it, but a major thing. And then by 1980, the end of it. Major turning points in the labor movement. There was the Iran-Contra, Nicaragua-Contra, greatest increase in defense spending, and then greatest cutbacks in domestic programs. And we'll see some of these like Reaganomics with Trump now today of like, all right, tax cuts at the highest bracket, and it's actually going to benefit the working class, but it never does. And a couple points I just wanted to talk about with Ronald Reagan is his election was a turning point in the US. It was uncontested. If you look at that map, it is all red. Like Minnesota was the only state that was blue at the time, which I think is weird. Minnesota, I don't know why. But so he was really like a popular president at the time, and then all of these things happened. So even in being popular, even being in this, and I think that we've seen once we get to 2024 that Harris really ran on a Reagan campaign, like, and that's how far right that we've come, and we'll touch on that a little bit more. But one of the things I wanted to talk about with Ronald Reagan was there's also like the end to the like progress of labor movements and unions. So he crushed the PATCO strikes, which was air traffic controllers. He sent in the military to scab and like keep the airports running at the time. And then also, I think as we all, you know, may know or have heard of, like the crack epidemic in the United States at the time is directly tied to the Nicaragua Contra of importing crack cocaine in the United States, and then that becoming such a detrimental thing in the Black communities, especially in, you know, Los Angeles at the time. So terrible president, terrible time period, terrible president. And then I wanted to point out Bill Clinton next, because Bill Clinton was the new era of conservative Democrats. So very similar things to Ronald Reagan in that time period, 12 years later. He had the Personal Responsibility and Welfare Opportunities Act ended in his term, ending welfare as you know it. He eliminated aids for families with dependent children, which we've seen again in the tax cuts or the child tax credit under Biden. And in Haiti, we just had a Haiti forum. Who was at the Haiti forum? Okay, great. Standing room, let's go. The standing room was at the Haiti forum. After Hurricane Kirby talked about Haiti and the Clintons, I just wanted to do like a little more research myself of seeing like the Clintons' impact in Haiti. He lobbied to have really sweeping changes in Haiti's agriculture at the time that would make it more dependent on the United States, like for all of its crop and all of its things. He was the main benefactor in Haiti and still is today, like I think top 3 of all of the like economy and commerce there. So really he changed their entire economic programs under the guise of like philanthropy. There we go. Like, so he's like, oh, I'm going to help their economy. I'm going to like bring all of this funding there, but it's just funding for these corporations, these like major things, and no funding going to the Haitian people, as well as after the earthquake in 2010, sent a bunch of aid at the time, but the aid was to restore a resort type location. That was pretty much it.
Shame.
Yeah, shame. Exactly. And then moving on to George W. Bush, we have to add a couple of these. Let's move on. I think, at least for me, it's getting more familiar in my memory when we're at this time than previous, but war in Afghanistan, the Guantanamo Bay renditions, drone strikes, domestic wiretaps, rollback on environmental protections, like the Guantanamo Bay extraordinary renditions, he's kidnapping people. And sending them to Guantanamo Bay, black sites, yeah. And it's an official military base, so this is like all official business that was happening at this time. And as you can see by the 2 Republicans that I added, it's just to show how similar things are today under Democrats and how similar the flag that they're flying today, which is pretty disgusting when you think about Ronald Reagan and his policies and how similar Kamala and Joe Biden are even. So moving on to Barack Obama, this one people really get confused about, Yeah. So just to, I think a lot of people feel like that was such a great time for America. We elected a black man with this progress, and the progress looked like bailing out banks. Blue alert laws, National Defense Authorization Act. He was the deporter-in-chief, deported more people than any president since.
Shame.
Yeah. A troop surge in Afghanistan, really doubling down on all of the war and sending actual boots on the ground to all of these places, which I think even now they're doing slightly more, underfoot, being a little more, we're going to send a couple people here, a couple people there, because they had such major pushback at the time, and really just disgusting foreign policies and destruction. Libya, Yemen, Haiti, Afghanistan. And I think, at least for me, those are points that when people feel like it was good under Obama, that it's good for who? Because also it wasn't really good here, but it wasn't with the Palestine. It wasn't with the genocide in Palestine. It wasn't aired. We're not watching Yemenis, we're not watching people in Libya every day on our phones like we would be today. But if that was happening today, it would be a live stream just like Palestine was, and still is. Moving on to Joe Biden. Same thing with the Democrats on this. He's obviously funding Israel an insane amount. I can't even get shame. I can't even get the numbers when I was calculating this, because it's so vast. It's folded into so many different bills that are lumped together with other bills at the time. We're going to pass some social service and also this funding package to Ukraine, to Israel, and also these things. Abortion turnover, just as a reminder, that happened under Biden. That was under Biden. We had the House, we had the Senate, we had a Democrat in the White House, and that got turned over. So I think when people feel so afraid, and it's okay to feel afraid under this term with Trump, it is just worth remembering that we are fighting just as hard under a Democrat, and that there's fascist policies and turning over of all of our, human rights under a Democrat. Obviously ended COVID relief, what I touched on before about the child tax credit, that put kids in poverty, children, in poverty. That was a couple extra $100 that just benefited families that was removed, like a choice to remove it. Expanding oil drilling and fracking, that essentially has no differentiation now between Republicans and Democrats at all. There's no environmental protections like you would see in 1964. And then obviously the inflation crisis as well. That brings us to Harris ran as a Reagan Democrat. I think just like hearing these things and looking at it, for me, it became so clear how far right that campaign was. And so I think to your point of saying, oh, it wasn't far right enough, it's like how much she was further right than Trump on the border. She was further right on like immigration policy. She's further right on wanting to the arms embargo. They're like fighting over who wants to give Israel more and more money. Shame. And like the other thing for me that really got me this round is she could have done anything. She could have picked anything. It could have been that I'll wipe out $500 of debt in every American's household, and it would have got more votes. It would have got more people to support it. Maybe there wouldn't be 15 million people who abandoned her campaign. Could have just done an arms embargo. Like at the very least, the most relevant thing that has been on all of our minds this entire time, could have at least done that, but refused to make any concessions for the people, refused to make any policy. Could have said, I'm going to codify abortion rights all across America, codify LGBTQ, codify same-sex marriage, like codify any trans protection rights. Could have done any of these things at any point in time when she's seeing that she's losing, raised $1.5 billion, came out in debt of $2 million. Can you imagine blowing that amount of money in that 8 months? Like, can you imagine? Like, if we're going to go $2 million in debt, at least have that hit our pockets, right? And yeah, just, I think there's so many quotes with her of just wanting to maintain the most lethal military force. Like, we're going to continue to be as lethal as possible. So on this, I just kind of want to ask, like, what else have we seen from Democrats this election cycle or in recent history? Like, let's really drive this point home of how far right Democrats have been. What's some of the ads you've seen or
just
things
completely
online?
throwing trans people under the bus, just like totally turning code, as well as immigrants. I mean, I feel like we were all here 4 years ago when no human was illegal, and then suddenly it's like build Trump's wall. We're the Democrats, so
yeah. Absolutely. And like using it as a bargaining chip. Like, because this time they didn't even really do that. They're like, oh, no bargaining chips, just actually fuck everybody. And we're like, oh, okay. That's crazy, but sounds good. What else?
And also like adding on to that, like even just watching the first debate, the way they talked about immigrants as a problem and never acknowledged the humanity of people just was like horrible.
Right. Yeah, and like we'll send them all back. You're like, what are you even talking about at this point? Like, what else?
It felt like a lot of the during this campaign, it felt like a lot of the things that were on the table in 2016 in terms of healthcare for all, environmental protections, like things that at least like we were at least a part of the cultural conversation have been completely removed. Like it's not even an option. It's not even a part of the campaign anymore. Talk about it.
Yeah, and having months and months of having no policies at all. I mean, talk about that. We're running on a campaign of like genuinely zero policies, no policies on the website, no policy in talking about it, and at every step deferring to state legislation. Like, oh, I just think whatever the state decides. It's like that's not a policy of a president.
Knowing that it failed last time and then continuing to run on the Not That Guy campaign.
Yes. Yeah. Like the delusion. Like that didn't work before. Not that guy and what? How are you not that guy? Could you explain it to us? Because it's feeling like you're the same. Danielle?
I think one that was like so annoying is like there were all these interviews where she's like, I'm a cop, so I have a Glock. And I was like, who do you think you're winning with that? And then also the fact that her and Biden came out saying that they were not going to be okay with doing gender affirming care for people under 18. And I was like, well, if you're that way and you're pro-Israel, is there any difference at all?
Right.
There's not.
No.
A Cheney endorsement.
Two Cheney endorsements.
Yeah. And like, who do they think they're kidding when they're getting these like far right people to endorse? Like, who is that for? Like, those people aren't gonna vote for you anyways. I saw a couple more hands.
Couldn't say how she was different from Joe Biden at all.
Right?
He was extremely unpopular, probably the most unpopular president.
And she kind of knew that because she was the vice president, right? Like, she kind of knew.
He was forced to drop out.
Mhm.
How you different from him?
She's like, I think we're the same. Love that guy.
I was back and forth on whether or not I was gonna vote the whole time, and then I was finally successfully bullied into voting for Kamala. And as soon as I walked into the polling place, the first thing I saw was Republicans for Harris.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Celebrity pandering.
Mm.
Like, I don't give a fuck what you have to say.
I'm like, quit taking culture from us. Something. Leave Glorilla alone. It hurts. Marat?
I was gonna say, like, the student protests, like, crushing them, and not taking any of them seriously, like, where it's like the little rally down the street, like, I forget what the quote was, but like, just not like.
Yeah, she's like, join the little rally, join the little thing, and it was like a big march that had drums and was sick, like, okay.
She was historically like against fracking, but then pandered to big oil right when she was campaigning, and then also all the stuff about like being against Project 2025 while being funded by Republicans that were in the Heritage Foundation and helped write Project 2025.
Yeah, and I want to break down the term of like pandering a little bit too, because yeah, she's like pandering to these interests. It's kind of paid by them, you know.
Right.
It's like it's like with the arms embargo. It's not that, you know, I mean, if she wanted to win, she could have said that, you know, she could have like, all right, we're going to do an arms embargo. But in that, that's also saying to all of these major donors, all of these insane like donations from weapon manufacturers, partnerships, like, you know, that's landing in her pocket, in her friends' pockets, and everybody's pockets. So that's why it's no arms embargo, is because that means the stop of like that economic promise for the ruling class.
Just sorry.
No, I love it.
Lie.
Yeah.
I feel like my first election was Obama. I really thought because she wanted to win, we would just get Obama 2.0. We're going to do all kinds of progressive pandering, and we are not doing any of that shit when we're in office. And don't ask us about it, but at least we'll win because we want to beat the bad guy. And then it was like, no, I won't even do you the consideration of lying and saying something about this. Right. You know.
Biden was barely awake and he lied.
Yeah, I've had a number of letters published in the Philadelphia Inquirer, but there were two letters that they wouldn't publish. And these were, both made the same argument, is that you have tens of millions of people who don't have enough food to eat. You have 6 people who have 100 billion in assets, and both Trump and Biden and Harris, they all say that the economy is doing great because the stock market's up. So there's just, and they won't print those letters, and they won't raise that issue.
Right.
You know,
they don't want to do that.
any media source will not raise this issue, and they you know, they frame the discussion.
Exactly.
I wanted to circle back to what you brought up initially when she was like, we need the most lethal army ever, yada yada. First of all, lethal is legal. I don't know like where the scale is.
Extra death.
Death after the death. But along that same note, in the same like speech, which by the way, I don't even know if that was written in. I feel like she was just kind of like going off at that point.
Ad-libbing.
But what bothered me so much about the campaign was that it seemed like she was trying to please everyone, right? And she stood up there and called for a ceasefire, right? Finally, mind you. And then on the same note, followed up with Israel has a right to defend itself. So here's what I heard. The fire needs to stop, but where's the gasoline? We need more gasoline on the fire.
Exactly.
And it's like, we can't say that. And who are you pandering to when saying it? So anyways,
no, absolutely. Because it's like, okay, if you want it to stop, then stop sending them weapons.
Right.
At least that, like, just stop your own participation in it and see what happens. But couldn't do that.
There was like an interview where she said something like, oh, they made so much collard greens in the house that they did it in the bathtub. And let me just say, you know why that's a lie. Yeah.
What else? Anything else? We have some time on this point. I want to hear from everybody about this. So,
a lot of her ads mentioned like Trump being a felon, and like obviously he is, and I mean he sucks without that. But like it was just like a lot of anti-felon sentiment that I kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like,
I wonder why. Is it
reminiscent of like the Clinton tough on crime stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And she was really tough on crime of sending parents to jail when their children miss school, like truancy to locking up parents. What do you think that's going to do for the kids' school attendance?
Right.
Kind of playing off of that, like, I think that people resonated more with Trump because he was a criminal and because Kamala kept saying, I'm a cop, I'm a cop, I'm a cop. And like when we are all struggling and we're like, we see like why people are committing some of the crimes that they're committing, they kind of resonate more with the guy who's a felon versus someone coming out and saying, I'm a cop, I'm the top prosecutor.
Yes.
And like the other thing I would say was Kamala Harris was not even popular when they went through the primary in 2016. No one liked you. Well, then you were unlikable.
And she didn't get like elected in. She didn't get chosen. It was just she just got placed on that. And to touch on the point that you said about Trump and people's relating more to him, I think that we saw that a lot. We recently did street interviews at like Diamond Street and 23rd, and that's what we're hearing. You know, like people just really being like, oh, well, he's more aligned with me. He's the person who's saying the quiet part out loud. I at least know that he's batshit crazy and saying all this wild stuff instead of conniving and being like behind the scenes and secretive and whatever. And like, what I want to point out about that is that's a really sad state of the country, that we would rather like, you know the hand that's going to hit us than to, be worried about when a hit's going to come. Like that's a sad choice. That's a sad choice. And I think that in that choice is why we saw so many people abandon voting in general and abandon voting for Harris. Because if the Democrats are supposed to be about the people, then be about the people. And if it's not, then we're not going to continue to be like gaslit into thinking that this has anything to do with us, because it doesn't. Layla?
Oh yeah, just building American consent for war against Russia, China, and Iran. It's kind of like unreal how we don't address how Biden's presidency also added fire to the Asian hate crisis that we saw in the United States. And we can't go and call out Trump and then not talk about how Biden and Kamala Harris's policies definitely have impacted immigrant communities and how they're seen in the United States.
Exactly. Completely true.
I just want to talk about people said they got bullied during this election, and I was definitely bullied, but I ended up not voting for Ottawa. But I lost some friendships over that, and I know. But it's like the whole time during this Palestine thing, there was nothing. Then these people come out the woodworks.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do this because I know get into divisive politics. It's not that's what they want.
Right.
But it's still disheartening. And I had friends and family just say, I just can't. I don't have the capacity to care about those people. And it's just but then they go. My one friend had a child. He goes, if you don't vote for her, it's gonna be hard to look you in the eye because I have a child. And what I see from his child, I see over in Palestine.
Right.
You can't beat me on those issues.
That's a beautiful point, and it makes me. We want to touch on that too, of how to talk to even those people, because what we don't want to do is, however you voted, get away from me. I don't want to organize. We all actually really need to be breaking these barriers with people, and it's sad. It's sad when you lose friendships. It's sad when you lose relationships. It's sad when you can't talk to your dad how you normally would. That's a me thing. So, but it's those things are sad. It's sad to not have people who are principled around you. And some of that is based in fear, talking about your child versus someone else. But how do we make those people have working class internationalism? How do we make those people understand that it's not just about us in this country, while still being compassionate enough to say things are really hard here? So I get it. I get why people make like, well, this is a compromise I just have to do, because things are hard here. Like, it is difficult, but we have to find a way to make that internationalism. We have to find the way to make those links, and we have to find the way to like bring those people in. And so I think that that's a great transition into our next slide, because a way to make sure that we're not making the same mistakes that maybe happened in 2016, that we can make sure that we're really like analyzing that time period and addressing how to do it differently this round. And part of that is bringing those people in and having those conversations. So we're going to go over this slide, and then just so you guys know, there'll be a time when you'll go into breakout groups and have just smaller group discussions. So don't think that, discussion portions are over. We want to hear from everyone and everyone to have more time to really like break that out with each other. So what we learned from Trump's last term, I think people really hit the streets, right? There was still a wave. There was the pink hats. There was demonization of the orange man. There was people who were looking what to do. There was more applications to organizations than ever, although I will say this round in organizing has even more, so that's great. But there was a lot of people who were angry, who were scared, and who wanted to know what's next. And I think part of what you're talking about is like the internationalism has to happen, because what happened last time is that Trump is a bad man. Trump is bad. Republicans are bad. Under this is what's going to happen. And you know what that allowed is for the Democrats to co-opt it. They're like, Trump is bad. You do have to be scared. That is true. And elect us. Get us in. Like, let's go. And then we saw under Joe Biden that that's when abortion rights was turned over. So it's like we can't allow them to be the only solution. And so we want to look at how to be principled about that, because it's not about Trump. And it's not actually about Republicans. It's about this two-party system, and it's about the ruling class against the working class.
Right.
I've been saying throughout this whole election, we just personally, as this country moves forward, we need to kind of dismantle Republican and Democrat getting another break.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Something similar like a parliamentary system where we have a body of an odd number of people with all different backgrounds and all different income brackets all coming together in a room and making laws. And then once they, and almost like a judicial system, or jury.
Yeah.
Everybody, and then people from, it'll be different because there's so much diversity, different backgrounds, different income.
Yeah, and that's exactly a point I wanted to make on this too, is so if it's just me and Katie, okay, and Katie and I are really aligned in the things that make us afraid, the things that we care about, and Katie and I just talk to each other, and it's just her and I, we're going to just be organizing with us. These are the two issues that are really important to us. Then what happens? Katie and I are organized, but into what? We're not a part of anything bigger. We're not trying to go outside of our circles. Like, it doesn't matter if even just the only people in this room are going to be talking about it. I want you guys to be able to go out and talk to the people in your neighborhood, the people in your workplaces, the people you take SEPTA with who are sitting next to you, because it's going to take all of us really to do that. And we have to, instead of having an insular activist culture, which is what I think we saw, there's tons of women marches, there's tons of things. And then it's the Democrats saying, we're the solution. And like, were they? Were they the solution for us?
No.
Yeah, they weren't the solution for us. And as soon as they got in office, they showed us that. And so it's really going to take expanding who we're organizing with, and not just being like, I'm an activist for women's rights. I'm an activist for this. And as soon as that trend is over, I'm going to go back to my couch, which happens.
I just wanted to add quickly, because you laid this out earlier, and I think it's important to note, because Trump isn't going to be here forever, that this was a part of that kind of capture of like popular language, a part of the Democratic strategy going back, way back into what you laid out earlier in the 50s and 60s. So it's not just like they say we're the solution right now as opposed to Trump. That's a part of their strategy now, in the future, and in the past, that they're going to use the language that the people are using to bring them into a losing paradigm for us.
Yeah, and I think that's why, because that happens in everything, all types of language. Like we were talking about it yesterday with a group of us, of like when language is co-optable, it means that we have to understand and ask the questions of what that actually is. Like, what does women's rights look like to you? Let's talk about it. Is it the women in Palestine? Is that also who's a part of that equation? Like, how can we actually think about it and challenge those things? And okay, if this is important, if this is the thing that matters to you, here's how it's tied into a larger system, a larger understanding, a larger program. And I think that goes into like, we need a working class program carried out in working class neighborhoods, like not just an activist culture. If it's still like, if we're not actually reaching the people who we need to be organizing, the people we need to also be protecting and fighting alongside, like the people who we want to be arm in arm in tackling these things, then it's not going to be lasting if we're not bringing all of these different people into this. And that goes into the last point, which Trump will only carry out policies that we allow.
That's right.
Something that I loved about the What Is to Be Done watch party is it's like, okay, if the ICE truck comes out into your neighborhood, what are you going to do? Are you going to let it take people away, or are you going to be already organized, which is the goal, to not even just be reactive, to already be organized where you know that schedule, you know the ICE truck is coming, you already have your team who's going to be arm in arm, not allowing anyone to enter the apartment building, not allowing anyone to do that. That is what it's going to take. So what else have we seen from or observed from the previous term, whether it's under Trump or another term? Like what do we need to keep in mind in order to move forward?
I just think if you lead from empathy, you can connect with anyone regardless of how they ascribe a moniker to themselves. So I really thought what you were saying with people trying to like shame you for having issues. I was having that because I was connecting with a lot of people who were going to vote for Trump, who didn't think they were going to vote for Trump. And I was immediately able to get through to them past all of it because I just recognized he's the only guy who's admitting that you're economically suffering,
right?
And saying, I'll do something about it. Now let's look if that's actually real.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas the Democrats were like, actually everything's great, sweetie. Look at this graph.
Yes.
Like, our GDP is great. Maybe this is user error. And it's like, no one can work with that.
Exactly.
I think the main thing is don't allow yourself to fall into the trap of like villainizing a common person for only having two options and going with the one that said that they would help them.
Yes.
You know, we don't give Americans a poli-sci degree every 4 years for the election. And it's not explained. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think I was also a part of the Claudia and Karina campaign, and we encountered a lot of people just talking about a third party option, and especially in a place that was such a Democratic stronghold, of people being like, you're going to be the people who will do it. And it's like, here's the thing. I don't care who you vote for. Quite honestly, what I want is you. What matters to you? What matters to you in your neighborhood? What do you want to see? And like, that was something we just did a cleanup in a neighborhood, because as talking to people about it, they're like, I want to see this neighborhood cleaned up. And it's like, bet. That's what we're going to do then. I hope you join us. Like, because it's that easy. I don't need to villainize you. I don't need to be divisive in my language. What I want to do is to sharpen contradictions. Exactly what you're saying of like, you believe that Trump had your back. We know that's not going to be true. So when it's true, instead of being like, I told you, it's like, ooh, so that didn't work out. How do we organize around that? Danielle?
I think one thing too is like identifying who the real enemy is. I have a lot of friends who, like, because of stuff that they've heard, don't like unions and don't like striking, and like speaking to them about how we all got rights in the first place for like 8-hour work days, 5-day work weeks, and how like nobody who stands to make billions of dollars off of you is going to give up profit because you guys are voting for a Republican or Democrat, whatever. And like kind of talking them through that, and not in a way that makes them feel stupid, because I understand that a lot of people hate being educated by somebody who's their peer or younger than them. Like changing how we're talking about it and like making it so that they're interested in. I think that's good. Like talking about what they need to focus on, once they see that, once they know that, like, Elon Musk, first of all, one, not a smart person. You know what I mean? Like, some people, I think that there are a lot of people who, like, were worshiping him for a while. If you show them who he is, after a while, they're like, oh wait, this guy is an idiot. Maybe having him in charge of Doge, or whatever the fuck they're calling it, isn't really a great, as somebody who invested in Dogecoin at some point, couldn't do it. But I think that, like, doing that kind of stuff has had a lot of friends realize it's not about the electoral college. It's about us as workers having to be with each other.
Yeah, and a part of that's demystifying the American dream.
For sure.
Like, what you think that Elon Musk he pulled himself up by the bootstraps and he saved and he didn't make his fortune and his family off of blood emeralds in South Africa? I don't know. But what else have you learned?
I thought success kind of helping people come to the realization that like capitalism is the enemy.
Yes.
I think that that's like an easier way to lead into things. Like when people are complaining about the price of living and rent and groceries and all that, kind of turning it around and be like, yeah, you know, and like it didn't get any better with Biden, and we know it doesn't get better with Trump. Like it really feels like neither of these parties are working for us. And I can get people to agree with that. I can even get my dad, who you and I have the same situation. My dad is a Zionist. I can even get him to agree that the billionaires and oil companies are the problem. It's just like after that, it's difficult.
Yeah, and after that takes something that Eugene said in that watch party too is like it just takes consistency. Like I will be the person that will struggle through these topics with you. Like that can be me. And really, when people learn the most is when they experience it. So we can't just expect to dictate out some historical facts and some things that like maybe aren't relevant to someone and be like, oh, why don't you get it? Like once they go through that, once they're having a harder time paying their rent, once they see that inflation is only going to get worse, once it starts to feel like they can't survive, like that's a great time to still be that consistent person who's like, let's struggle through this together. What's the next steps instead of just the struggle and the learning and the talking about it? What's next after that for you?
Yeah, something I've struggled with in the last Trump administration and this one is like the conversations with across the aisle, because I do think there's real value in empathizing with people that vote differently than you and trying to understand where they come from. But at the same time, there's a lot of issues where actually we have the popular majority, and it's just a matter of not being organized and not having enough people like activated to do something about it. So I feel like confused sometimes on where I should put my own priorities and where we should put our priorities generally in terms of like changing the hearts and minds of like violent Zionists versus like, you know, looking for people that are already with us and just like don't have spots to like put that energy.
That is a great point. And for me personally, I'm not going to try to change the hearts and minds of Zionists. What I'm going to try to do is be organized with all of the like-minded people and show them they're wrong. Show them that we're the majority. Show them that the masses have power.
That's right.
Because we do.
Yeah.
And exactly what you're saying, it's going to take a lot less effort to win over those people who are already aligned and be like, what's next? What is next that we do? How do we do this together? How do we fight this together? And then, you know, at a certain point, the violent Zionists are going to tuck their tail between their legs and run away because they don't have the power anymore and they don't have the narrative. And they've actually already done that.
Yeah.
When there are thousands of people in the streets and their little thing has two people who, you know, aren't even chanting or doing anything and are afraid hiding behind cops, they already know they don't have the power. And so I love that point. I'm going to move on to just could talk to you guys forever. But what's relevant to working class people? Because as we just laid out, nothing that they're covering on either side is necessarily relevant for people. Nothing that they'll actually change. Like you said, Trump did try to appeal to working class people by saying there is an economic crisis. But I just want to go over these before we open it up. So 150 million people are having trouble making ends meet week to week. So not even paycheck to paycheck, not month to month, week to week. 22 million people are going hungry week to week. 30 million kids can't afford school lunch. 12 million spent over half of their income on rent. That's something that we really have never seen before.
Yeah.
And 650,000 homeless people are in the United States. And most of these, which could be solved by like one policy change, like taking 2% of the defense budget, like could solve this. We have enough homes. for homeless people. We have enough food for people who are hungry. Yeah, we have enough resources.
What you're saying all the above there. I was saying that people who won this election, both parties are guilty for not addressing those
Absolutely.
points. You know,
Yeah.
there are people that are homeless that you wouldn't believe are homeless. They work 9 to 5.
Yes.
And they sleep. I work at the airport. I see people sleep in their cars, in their vans, in the airport parking lot.
Oh, that's a great point.
Or sleep under the terminal.
That's the demystifying of the American dream is like you could have 3 jobs and still not be able to make ends meet and not be able to afford a home and not to be able to do any of these things. It's not like what they paint in so many other campaigns with welfare, that these are just lazy people who are cashing it. No, like times are actually tough. It is actually really difficult. Inflation is an impossible thing that we're faced against. That like, if half of your paycheck is going to rent, and then groceries is what, and then bills is what, like there's no wonder so many Americans are in debt. What else? What else is relevant to the working class people?
Universal health care is like almost 2/3 of the country support it, and not a single politician will put it in their platform.
Yep. I'll rephrase. What ways can we talk to people to bring them in? What ways can we say, does this matter to you? Let's talk about it.
I think we have to sort of establish as a people what are going to be our red lines in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about what Huey P. Newton of the Black Panther Party says, that kids are passed through schools that don't teach, to look for jobs that don't exist, and they're left stranded to stare at their lives glamorized on the TV around them. And that's so much the situation in Philadelphia now, where it's like we have the worst schools in the country, you know what I mean? And kids feel that, they know that. I work in criminal defense. When kids come to me, they're like, I can't read the papers that I'm charged with, right? It's like they can't read the papers and they're being held accountable for they're criminally responsible as individuals. There's no jobs for them. The jobs that they can get are hustle jobs. Like you can deliver food, you can drive people around, you can, these are all these little hustles. You make like 9, 10 little hustles and sell stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you don't have a living. You can't make a living that way.
Right.
And then all around you, when you pick up your phone, your whole life, you're looking at people who have extravagant wealth, unspeakable like ease of living. They could just be on Bora Bora today, they're at this concert tomorrow. And they're like, why aren't you here? And it's like, because I'm in the real world where people don't care about us, right? And so we have to say, what's our red line? We're working regular people, and if we band together, they're terrified of us. Huey P. Newton said too that power is the ability to define a phenomenon and to make it behave in a desired way. And we need to be able to define this country and then make it behave in the way that we want it to behave.
That's right.
Let's give us. Gabby, did you have a point?
Yes. Another thing that's relevant to working class people that struck me recently is healthcare.
Yes.
Just as we need to be consistent in talking to people and pointing out the contradictions, the fact that this is the richest country on the planet, but half of the residents in the town where I work at a school can't read. Like, how is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to chronic health issues are a huge reason. It don't matter Democrat or Republican. We're going into debt over medical bills, hospital bills, ambulance bills. People are dying in the streets. COVID was a thing in the richest country on the planet. We couldn't come together and figure out a system to take care of each other when Cuba, who is under an insane blockade of the United States, created 5 vaccines where they had doctors with a 300-to-1 ratio. Every single person can be a doctor 1 day a year, guaranteed, because of planning, because we planned our economy, because we train doctors. We don't make school so expensive that no one can afford it. So that's just another thing that I feel like is really relevant. Our families, our elders being cared for. Like home care is a huge industry, a huge, field where people are working in Philadelphia, and people are literally not paid. They're taking care of their family, working full time, unpaid. And it contributes to the homelessness, it contributes to the hunger, it contributes to the despair. And we really do have to come together and start valuing the labor that's important to us and not allow our government to devalue the labor that's very essential and necessary for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And a part of that, like locally, that we can address is it goes back to a lot of people are like, ooh, it's scarce for me, so that means it's scarce for everybody. Like, that means we don't have the resources. That means that we don't actually have the funding and the money. In Philadelphia alone, $877 million goes to the police.
Shame.
That's 4%, like 4% is for education of that budget. Like, 2% is like any social services, like anything that's actually a service gets scraps, crumbs, nothing. And there's actually so many, I sat in on a hearing, there were so many organizations and nonprofits even that were making real changes in their community who were genuinely begging for crumbs of like the city council. Like, could I just get like 1 million? Like, could I just get, $100,000? Could I just, like, this would make a drastic change. And I was like, oh no, that all has to go to the police. And then what do the police do? They occupy our neighborhoods. They sit inside of their cars in black neighborhoods all across Philadelphia doing jack shit, except for showing that they are an occupied force that is willing to take it out on all of the people there at any time, just so they don't feel comfortable in their own neighborhoods. They don't feel comfortable walking around. That's what we're paying them to do. That is our tax dollars that could be going to something else. And that's like another thing that we have to struggle for. I would rather have healthcare than have all of these cops sitting in their cars playing games on their phones, eating and taking naps, being ready to threaten and kill people at the drop of a dime. I'll take a couple more points on this.
I was gonna say a big issue I've heard of too is that you pointed out rent as well. I also saw, I think someone posted there's this fancy expensive building, the part that no one can afford, and so it's just being laid vacant. And related to that, speaking to people in the neighborhoods, they're saying like we're unsafe, but police don't care until these expensive buildings pop up, and then people who are wealthier move in, and then they start caring about the safety. Again, doing safety in unethical ways.
Right, and their safety is, again, oh, now we have to protect this property. Now I'm gonna get out of my car, now it's on.
Gentrification and like the displacement that comes out of it, like all of the like pervasive issues that it spreads throughout.
Did you have a point?
I was gonna just talk about how like a lot of socialist rhetoric and policies, they're like people will generally agree with you on that. Like if you don't go into it saying I'm a socialist, this, that, and the third, because that can kind of scare people off. But they're gonna agree with you on most of the stuff you have to say anyway. So I feel like maybe just in a way to connect to other working people, you can talk about like their problems and present the solutions you already know are socialist, and then they kind of come around and see what you're really talking about, and they say, oh, okay, maybe this is this is what I should try instead of voting for
and
whoever.
And to listen, like what are the problems that you face? What matters the most to you?
I can relate to your point because every time like the socialist topic comes up, it's like people saying, oh, like you're gonna give money to people who don't want to work, or you're gonna give money to like people who don't care. We're gonna take the private property away, like all these things that like blown out of proportion and not really down to earth of what the issue is. So like I was talking to other people about this, like if I would just promote socialism, people are just gonna cut me off like right away. They're not gonna even listen to anything.
Yeah, and it's important in this new phase to think of how we can reach people and the best ways to do that. And we'll definitely talk more about that in the breakout group. Olga?
Sorry, I lost my train of thought, but I think housing keeps coming up, and I work as a paralegal in housing, particularly work in municipal court, and I see people get evicted daily. So I think another thing that like is important, like when you're talking about things like housing, is easily connecting it to other things. For example, a lot of the people that I work with that are getting evicted fell behind on rent because of one issue with healthcare. That is the biggest thing that I see people in court for, is because they got sick, somebody in their family got sick, they couldn't afford things, boom, fell behind rent, now they're in eviction court. I've seen people get evicted for $1.
Wow. And people locked up for $1
And then, or people who don't show up to their hearing because they're incarcerated for something so small and petty. So it's like you see these things, how they're all connected, and I talk to the tenants just like every day on a regular, and it's like people think that the working class is stupid, But who else knows better of the conditions than the working class who's affected by it?
That's right. Yep. And we're gonna save the rest of them. I love everyone's points, but we will be answering these questions in our small group discussions as well, which I want to move on to. So we will have 4 breakout groups. That's just where I'm gonna have you guys count off, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're gonna be away from the people you're sitting next to. That's scary, I know, but that's what's gonna happen. And we're gonna cover these questions, and each group will have a printed paper of these as well. So Trump was last elected in 2016. Thinking about all of the political struggles that have occurred between then and now, are we more prepared to meet this moment? And what makes it different than 2016? Katie, want to do the next one?
Sure. What are you hearing the most about the election in your circle, coworkers, friends, family, etc.? How can we meaningfully engage in dialogue with those people? What types of conversations would encourage them to see things differently or even bring them into organizing spaces like this?
Trump's agenda could have a devastating impact on all types of working class people. What do you think could affect Philadelphians the most, and how can we organize to protect those people?
And how do we strengthen the organizations or groups to prepare them for repression and strengthen them to win the battles that they're engaging in?
So these will be questions that you answer, and then just so you know, you'll also be kind of summarizing and synthesizing these report backs, and one person in your group will stand up and be brave and project and like share the answers to these questions to everybody. So to start with the breakout groups, we're gonna go 1 to 4. 1.
2.
Okay. 3.
Say it out loud.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Did I already do it? This row, sorry.
4.
1,
2,
3,
4.
2,
3, 4.
1,
2, 3,
4.
1,
2,
3. Yep. I'm like,
1,
2,
3,
1, 2, 3, 4. It's a freestyle now, so you know.
3.
4. All right.
1, 2, 3.
4. 1, 2. Great, 2. We're on 2. Okay, so group 1 will be Justin. Is Justin in the room right now?
Justin right here.
Okay, Justin, you're gonna go to the kitchen if you're in group 1, but everyone don't go yet. Just wait to hear all your group's locations.
Oh, and just to clarify, we will come back here after, so.
Yeah, so you'll do your breakout groups, you'll come back, we'll do our report backs, and then we'll pretty much be done. Layla, everyone look at Layla. Layla is group 2, and you'll be in the library. Group 3 is Olga. Olga was out there. You'll stay in this room. And then group 4 is Luke, and you'll head to the conference room, which we'll direct you to. You just go out this door in the next door.
Where's the Luke?
Luke?
Luke.
All right.
Luke with me in the library. We're going to be downstairs in the
Pause the live stream. Thank you.